Imagine waking up one morning in the 1960s to the sound of sirens. Instead of just drills at school or on TV, its real missiles have been launched, and the Cold War has turned nuclear. What would the world look like if the United States and the Soviet Union had actually pressed the button? Let's explore this alternate history. The Cold War was a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union that lasted from the late 1940s to the early 1990s. Instead of fighting directly, both sides built huge nuclear arsenals and competed for influence through politics, technology, and even space exploration. One of the scariest moments came during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the world came dangerously close to nuclear war. Fortunately, both sides backed down, and the Cold War continued as a battle of ideology, espionage, and economic strength rather than direct military confrontation. In the end, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and the nuclear nightmare was avoided. But what if things had gone the other way? Let's imagine the Cuban Missile Crisis didn't end with a compromise. Instead, miscommunication or a single mistake triggered the launch of nuclear weapons. Within minutes, major cities in both the United States and the Soviet Union would have been targeted. New York, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles could have been struck, while Moscow and Leningrad faced the same fate. The immediate destruction would have been unimaginable, but the real story begins with what comes after. Governments would struggle to maintain control, communication systems would collapse, and chaos would spread globally. Neighboring countries in Europe and Asia might be pulled in, either through alliances or fall out from the attacks. Instead of decades of political tension, the Cold War would have ended almost instantly with no clear winner. Humanity's survival would depend not on ideology, but on who could rebuild fastest, or who could simply endure the devastation. In this version of history, the Cold War would be remembered not for spy movies or space races, but as the moment the world nearly ended and partially did. First, global politics would never be the same. With both superpowers crippled, smaller nations might rise to power. Countries like China, India, or even Western Europe could become the new leaders of the world stage, reshaping alliances and trade. Second, technology and science would take a different path. The space race, which gave us satellites and eventually the moon landing, would likely be abandoned. Instead, resources would go into survival technology, farming methods for ruined lands, cleaner water systems, and safer shelters. Everyday conveniences like smartphones, the internet, or even global air travel might be delayed by decades or might never happen at all. Third, daily life for ordinary people would change drastically. Families might live in underground shelters for years, cities would be ghost towns, and cultural life movies, music, sports would shrink as survival became the only priority. Imagine a world where kids grow up not with cartoons and video games, but with constant reminders of the day the sky lit up. Finally, the idea of global cooperation might emerge earlier. After such destruction, surviving nations could realize that competition only leads to disaster, pushing them to work together far sooner than they did in our real timeline. So, what if the Cold War had turned nuclear? The world we know today, our technology, our culture, our very way of life might not exist at all. It's a haunting reminder of how close we came to a very different history. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.